"You don't belong here." Michael Turner's voice cut through the music like a blade, sharp and deliberate. Every conversation in the Waldorf Astoria ballroom seemed to pause. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, some curious, some amused, a few just pitying. I stood there in my best suit, an invitation in my hand, feeling the weight of his words press against my chest. My daughter Chloe's engagement party was in full swing. Glittering chandeliers, champagne towers, tuxedos, and gowns worth more than my annual income. And here I was, the father who'd raised her alone, being told in front of everyone that I didn't belong. Chloe's eyes found mine across the room. A flicker of pain, then guilt, then helplessness. She took a step toward me, but Michael blocked her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "This is a private event," he said, "for family. And close friends. Family." The word burned. I'd worked double shifts, built furniture until my hands bled, saved every tip so Chloe could graduate from Columbia without $1 of debt. And now, in this room full of crystal and gold, the man who'd married my ex-wife had decided I wasn't worthy to stand beside my own daughter. If you've ever been told you don't belong, if someone's ever tried to erase you from the moments that matter most, stay with me. Because what happened just hours later turned this night into a story Michael will never forget. And if you want more revenge stories like this, subscribe now. You're not going to want to miss what comes next. My name is Daniel Hayes. I'm 52 years old, and I live in a small brownstone apartment in Brooklyn, New York. The kind of place where the creak of the floorboards reminds you that history lives here. I wasn't always a furniture maker. For 20 years, I was an architect, the kind who could stand in front of a blank sheet and see a skyline. But 8 years ago, after my divorce from Rebecca, I traded steel and glass for oak and walnut. My hands, once used for drafting lines on blueprints, now carve dovetails and sand tabletops until they're smooth as silk. Rebecca and I have a daughter, Chloe. She's 24 now, a graduate from Columbia University. I still remember dropping her off for her first day there, thinking I'd give anything to see her walk across that stage with a diploma in hand. And I did give everything. Double shifts, late nights of workshop, so cold in winter I could see my own breath. It didn't matter. Every dollar went to her future. Brooklyn's skyline is my daily view, but Chloe is my true horizon. The one constant in a life that's been rebuilt more times than I'd like to admit. This is a man I am quiet, deliberate. And, if I'm honest, a little worn around the edges. But when it comes to my daughter, there's nothing I wouldn't do. And on the night of her engagement party in Manhattan, I learned just how far I was willing to go. Rebecca moved on quickly after the divorce. Within a year, she married Michael Turner, a man with a jawline built for magazine covers and a resume full of boardroom victories. His world was high-rise offices in Midtown, tailored suits, and dinners with city council members. I never minded that he had money. What I minded was the way he carried it like a shield and a weapon all at once. Michael didn't just live in Manhattan. He ruled his corner of it. And in his eyes, I was just ordinary. But Chloe loved him, or at least tolerated him for her mother's sake. I respected that. She was building her own life now, working as a junior editor at a publishing house near Union Square, wearing the confidence I'd always hoped she'd have. So, when the invitation came for her engagement party, I didn't hesitate. It was at the Waldorf Astoria, the kind of venue where the walls hold more history than most small towns. I rented a suite, shined my shoes, and picked out a gift, a hand-carved jewelry box made in my workshop lined with velvet the color of midnight. Walking into that ballroom felt like stepping into another planet. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, the hum of money in the air. I didn't belong there and I knew it, but Chloe was there. That was enough. Or at least I thought it was, until Michael decided to remind me in front of everyone exactly where he believed I stood. The moment I spotted Chloe across the room, my chest eased. She was radiant hair swept up a soft blue dress that made her look like she belonged in a magazine spread. She saw me, and her smile lit the space between us. I started toward her, weaving between clusters of guests, sipping champagne. That's when Michael stepped into my path. His suit was a darker shade than the rest of the room. His tie perfectly knotted his smile just wide enough to hide the steel in his voice. "Daniel," he said like the name tasted foreign. "I'm surprised to see you here." "I got an invitation," I replied, keeping my tone even. "From my daughter." Michael's eyes flicked toward Chloe, then back to me. "This is a private event. For family and close friends." The words landed like a gavel. Around us, conversation softened. I could feel eyes on my back. Michael didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. His delivery was the kind that cut clean without leaving visible blood. "I am family," I said quietly, but there was no mistaking the edge in my voice. His gaze swept over me, the rented suit, the worn shoes polished within an inch of their life. "You don't belong here, Daniel." For a split second, Chloe's hand twitched at her side like she might come to me. But Michael moved just slightly, blocking her line of sight. And in that moment I realized this wasn't about tonight. It was about erasing me from her life, one public humiliation at a time. I didn't argue. There was no point. The room had already chosen its side, or maybe they were just pretending not to notice the way wealthy people do when something unpleasant happens. I turned and walked toward the exit, each step echoing off the marble floor of the Waldorf ballroom. The air in the hallway felt cooler, quieter, like I'd stepped out of a storm and into its calm eye. I stopped near a row of tall windows overlooking Park Avenue. Yellow cabs crawled past below their headlights, sliding across the glass. I could still see Chloe inside her, smile gone, her posture stiff. She was keeping it together for the guests, but I knew her well enough to recognize the tension in her shoulders. The humiliation was sharp, but it wasn't what stayed with me. What stuck was the intent. Michael hadn't just embarrassed me, he'd done it to send a message. That I didn't belong in her future. That I was disposable. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at the dark screen. Names flickered through my mind. People I'd known in another life, before wood shavings and workbenches, before I traded ambition for stability. People who still owed me favors. I thought about the years I'd given to Chloe, the tuition checks, the rent deposits, the nights I skipped dinner so she could have what she needed. Michael had no idea who he was dealing with. The marble floor reflected my face back at me, older and more tired than I remembered. But there was something else there, too, resolve. I didn't go home. Instead, I walked 2 blocks south to a quiet coffee shop I knew stayed open late. The place hadn't changed in 10 years, same chipped wooden tables, same faint smell of roasted beans and rain-soaked coats. I slid into the corner booth and pulled out my phone. One name sat near the bottom of my contacts, Ethan Clark. We hadn't spoken in years, but once he'd been my closest friend. We'd met back when I was still designing buildings in the city. He was a photographer with a talent for being in the right place at the wrong time. More importantly, Ethan had a knack for finding out things people didn't want found. I hesitated for a second, thumb hovering over the call button. This wasn't about petty pride. Michael had made it clear he intended to erase me from Chloe's life. If I wanted to stay, I'd have to make sure he thought twice before trying again. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Daniel, man, it's been forever." "Yeah," I said, glancing out the rain-speckled window towards Park Avenue. "I need a favor." There was a pause on the other end. What kind? The kind where you dig deep. Background checks old headlines, anything that doesn't add up. Ethan whistled low. Sounds serious. It is. I lowered my voice. His name's Michael Turner, lives in Manhattan. Thinks he's untouchable. Ethan chuckled. Nobody's untouchable. For the first time that night, I almost smiled. By the next afternoon, my phone buzzed with Ethan's name on the screen. I answered before the first ring finished. You were right, he said without preamble. Your boy Michael has some skeletons. I stepped away from the noise of the workshop into the alley, where the air smelled faintly of sawdust and rain. Tell me. Ethan's voice dropped. He's been involved in a real estate deal upstate Hudson Valley near Kingston. On paper, it's all clean, but there's a lawsuit pending. Locals claim the construction project violated environmental regulations, dumped waste into a protected wetland. I frowned. That's not exactly headline-grabbing in Manhattan. Maybe not, Ethan said, but here's the twist. One of the plaintiffs is a state assemblyman's brother, and the case is heating up. If it gets traction, it could cost Michael more than money. It could ruin his networking golden boy image. I leaned against the brick wall, letting the information settle. Michael's whole identity was built on control, on being the polished host who never faltered. Public scandal would crack that facade faster than any argument I could win. What do you want me to do? Ethan asked. Not yet, I said. First, I need to see him again. In person. You planning to confront him? Not exactly, I replied, a slow edge creeping into my voice. I'm going to let him know I'm not going anywhere and that I know things. For the first time since the engagement party, the balance felt like it was shifting. 2 nights later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Michael would be attending a charity gala at the Metropolitan Club. Black tie, of course, the kind of place where a bad headline could follow you out the door and straight into the society pages. I didn't have an invitation, but I knew someone who did. Ethan. He met me outside under the soft glow of Fifth Avenue street lamps, handing me a neatly pressed tux. This is reckless, he muttered, straightening my bow tie. Reckless gets results, I said, walking past the marble columns and into a sea of crystal chandeliers. The room buzzed with laughter and the clink of champagne flutes. I spotted Michael near the bar, surrounded by men in tailored suits and women in dresses that cost more than my truck. His hand was on Chloe's back, guiding her toward a group of donors. She looked stunning and trapped. I approached, slowly weaving through the crowd until I was just close enough for him to notice. The moment our eyes met, his smile faltered just for a second, but enough for me to see it. Daniel, he said, forcing a cordial tone. I didn't expect you here. That makes 2 of us, I replied, letting my gaze flick briefly to Chloe before returning to him. I leaned in slightly, my voice low enough for only him to hear. Nice event. Shame if someone here heard about Hudson Valley. His jaw tightened the glass in his hand, tilting just enough to spill a drop. I smiled politely, stepped back and melted into the crowd, leaving him to wonder just how much I knew. The next morning, I found an envelope wedged under my workshop door. No return address, just my name in neat, deliberate handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a notice from the city's building inspection department. According to it, my workshop was temporarily closed pending investigation of code violations. I knew instantly this wasn't random. The phone rang before I could process it. Chloe's number. Dad? What happened? Her voice was tight with worry. Michael says there's some legal issue with your business. He's worried it might affect the wedding. Of course he was. I kept my voice even. It's just paperwork, sweetheart. Don't worry about it. But when I hung up, my hands clenched around the phone. This was Michael's style. No shouting, no open confrontation. Just pressure applied in all the right places to make life uncomfortable until you stepped aside. I called Ethan. "He's moving," I said flatly. "I figured. After you spooked him the other night, he's not going to sit still." I looked around the empty workshop, the smell of sawdust replaced by the stale odor of bureaucracy. Then we moved faster. Ethan's voice sharpened. "You want to go public?" "Not yet," I replied. "First, I want to see just how far he's willing to go, because the moment he crosses the line, that's when I'll bury him." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective. I stepped out the city's hum, filling my ears, and felt the familiar burn of resolve. 2 days later, Ethan called, with a tone I hadn't heard since our younger, more reckless days. "You'd better come see this in person." We met at a small diner in Queens, the kind with cracked leather booths and bottomless coffee. He slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were printed emails, property records, and a grainy photo of Michael standing beside a man I recognized from the news, Ray Delgado, a contractor who'd been indicted last year for fraud and illegal dumping. "Where did you get these?" I asked. Ethan smirked. "Public records and a little creative digging." Turns out Delgado was the subcontractor on Michael's Hudson Valley project. And this, he tapped one of the emails, links Michael directly to decisions that cut costs by skipping environmental safety protocols. I flipped through the papers slowly, each page another nail in the coffin of his polished image. But it was the last document that made me stop cold, a signed witness statement from a former site manager claiming Michael had ordered him to keep quiet about the waste dumping. "This is enough to ruin him," I murmured. Ethan leaned back, sipping his coffee. "Question is, do you want to use it now, or wait until it'll hurt him most?" I looked out the rain-streaked window, my reflection fractured by droplets. "I'll wait," I said finally. "He's already on edge. The right moment will make this nuclear." For the first time, I could see the endgame taking shape. And it was going to be devastating. The break I'd been waiting for came faster than I expected. One Thursday evening, Chloe sent me a link to a live stream. "Michael's doing an investor quanda tonight," she said. "Thought you might like to see what he's been working on." I clicked the link, and there he was, sitting in a sleek conference room in Midtown, all glass walls and polished steel. Behind him, a banner read, "Hudson Valley Eco Resort Building, a Sustainable Future." I almost laughed. For the first 20 minutes, he played his part perfectly charming, confident, peppering his answers with buzzwords like green initiative and community impact. The online chat scrolled with praise, and then it happened. A reporter from a local paper unmuted. "Mr. Carver, how do you respond to claims that your Hudson Valley project has been cited for environmental violations?" Michael's smile faltered, just slightly, but I saw it. He recovered quickly, brushing off the question as misinformed rumors and pivoting to another topic. But the seed had been planted. Comments in the live-stream chat turned sharp questions started repeating. And for the first time, I saw beads of sweat on his forehead. "Ethan called me before the stream even ended. That's it. You see it." "Yeah," I said, my voice calm but electric inside. "The cracks are showing. All we have to do is widen them." I closed the laptop, my mind already on the manila folder sitting in my desk drawer. The right moment was almost here, and Michael had just walked straight toward it. The very next day, an embossed envelope arrived at my apartment. Inside was an invitation to Michael and Chloe's pre-wedding charity banquet, an evening of elegance at the Plaza Hotel. Formal attire, live orchestra, media coverage guaranteed. He must have sent it thinking I'd decline. But instead, I saw it for what it was, the perfect stage. That night I called Ethan. "We do it there," I said. "You're sure? That's a room full of his investors and friends. He'll try to shut you down the second you open your mouth." I smiled into the receiver. "He can try, Over the next 48 hours, we planned everything: who would leak the documents, when the press would receive them, even the timing of the release to coincide with the peak of the evening. Ethan's contact at the New York Ledger promised to run the story online the moment the files hit their inbox. The Plaza's ballroom was a cathedral of gold and crystal that night. Chandeliers glowed above tables dressed in white linen and silverware polished to a mirror shine. Michael worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, playing the perfect host. I stayed in the background, moving from table to table, greeting old acquaintances from Chloe's side of the guest list. At 8:45 sharp, Ethan slipped me a nod from across the room. The files had been sent. I took a slow breath, eyes locked on Michael as he prepared to make his speech. In less than 5 minutes, the man who had tried to erase me would be standing in the center of a storm he couldn't control. Michael had just lifted his champagne glass when it started. From the far end of the ballroom, a murmur rippled through the crowd phones, buzzing screens, lighting up in unison. A woman in a navy gown gasped, turning her phone toward her table mates. I already knew what they were reading. New York Ledger developer Michael Turner, linked to environmental violations in Hudson Valley project, complete with scanned emails, property records, and the witness statement. The murmurs swelled into a low roar. Forks clinked against plates, chairs shifted. Some guests began scrolling feverishly, others whispering behind hands. Michael froze, mid-sentence, his toast abandoned. I watched the color drain from his face as he glanced toward the reporters in the room cameras, already lifting flashes, popping like lightning. Chloe looked between him and the nearest screen, confusion turning to dawning horror. From across the room, Ethan gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. The timing had been perfect. "Michael!" A voice from the press table called out care to comment on the Ledger's report. "Did you knowingly hire indicted contractor Ray Delgado?" Every eye in the room locked on him. He stammered something about baseless accusations and political smear campaigns, but his voice cracked under the weight of the silence. I took a sip of my champagne, letting the chaos swirl around me. Years of being dismissed, belittled, and erased, all condensed into this single, exquisite moment. And we weren't even at the wedding yet. The room was no longer his. Michael slammed his glass down, the sharp crack cutting through the murmurs. "This is a setup," he barked, voice echoing off the chandeliers. "Someone here is trying to destroy me." The cameras loved it, every flash catching the sweat on his forehead, the twitch at the corner of his mouth. One investor, a silver-haired man in a tailored navy suit, stood up. "Michael, these are your emails. Are you saying they're fake?" Michael's jaw tightened. I'm saying they're taken out of context." The crowd reacted like blood had hit the water. More questions fired. Did you order the site manager to keep quiet? Did you profit from the illegal dumping? His voice rose desperate now. "This is political. You're all being manipulated." And then he made the fatal mistake. He pointed directly at me across the ballroom. "This is his doing." Dozens of eyes swiveled my way. I didn't flinch. I simply set my glass down, adjusted my cufflinks, and said, "I think you should answer their questions, Michael." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. He had given me the spotlight without realizing it, and in that moment the balance of power shifted completely. A low buzz of whispers began again, but this time I could hear the word forming over and over in the crowd: guilty. I didn't need to say another word. By the time I reached the coat check, the ballroom behind me had dissolved into chaos. Reporters swarming, Michael investors whispering in tight circles, a few already heading for the exits. The air outside the plaza was crisp, the city lights sharp against the cold November night. I paused on the sidewalk, letting the muffled roar from inside fade into the hum of Manhattan traffic. A familiar voice called my name. Chloe. She stood just outside the revolving doors, her silver gown catching the streetlight. Her expression was unreadable, part shock, part something softer. Was it true, she asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. You deserve to know who you're marrying, I said finally. The rest is up to you. She looked down, the weight of it settling on her. For once, there was no defensiveness, no practiced smile. Just silence. Ethan's car pulled up to the curb. He leaned across to push the passenger door open. You did it, he said, his grin wide. I slid in, taking one last look at the plaza's glowing facade. Not yet, I replied. But soon. As we pulled away, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Major investors withdraw from Hudson Valley project amid scandal. I let out a slow breath. The first domino had fallen, and I wasn't stopping until the last one hit the floor. 2 weeks later, the wedding went ahead, but not the one Michael had planned. The Hudson Valley scandal had detonated through the news cycle. Investors fled. His company's stock plummeted. By the time the big day came, the guest list had been cut in half, and the venue downgraded from a private estate to a modest country club in Westchester. I arrived unannounced. Not in a waiter's vest this time, but in a tailored charcoal suit. Heads turned as I walked in, but no one moved to stop me. Not even Michael. Chloe met me halfway down the aisle. She looked different. Lighter. I asked him to let you be here, she whispered. Because whatever else happened, you're still family. Michael stood at the altar, thinner, paler eyes ringed from sleepless nights. For a moment, our gazes locked. There was no arrogance now, only recognition. When the ceremony began, I sat in the second row, close enough to hear every word, far enough to make my presence known without overshadowing the moment. After the vows, during the reception, Chloe approached with 2 champagne flutes. For the man who taught me that, truth matters more than appearances, she said. Michael lingered a step behind her. He didn't speak, but he gave a slow nod, a silent acknowledgement of a battle lost and a respect begrudgingly earned. As the band played the first dance, I stepped outside into the cool evening air. The war was over. The victory wasn't in his ruin. It was in reclaiming my place without begging for it. If you've stayed with me through this journey, you know revenge isn't just about payback. It's about making sure they can never erase you again.